Greetings, Montana. Greetings, world. Chris Islip here once again from the Montana World Affairs Council. Thanks for joining another session of our International Careers Week. We've been traveling this state for many years, talking to students, bringing expert speakers all around the big sky, and over we hear students ask, how did you get the job that you are doing? And so after hearing that so many times, we thought, why don't we just have a whole week full of people who have lived and worked internationally to help students across Montana know what's out there, what's available, and how do you do it? Our guests have come from Montana, from across the United States, and around the world, proving that to have an international career, you don't have to actually live internationally, but can be engaged in the world in many different ways. Let me quickly thank our very generous sponsors who are helping us bring this program to you at the Dennis and Phyllis Washington Foundation, Allegiance, First Interstate Bank, Trail West Bank, QFI, the High Stakes Foundation, and Longview Foundation. So let me introduce this session's guest. This is Amy Friedman. As an educator and counselor for over 25 years, Amy began her career as a middle school art teacher. One parking lot conversation changed her world. Love that. Can't wait to hear more on that one. A week after a colleague suggested considering teaching in Mexico, she and her husband were at a job fair in Iowa and accepted their first international teaching position in Honduras. What seemed like a short-term opportunity at the time ended up over 12 years teaching and traveling abroad. She's lived and worked in Honduras, Bangladesh, and Denmark before making her way back to the States and landing in Missoula, Montana. Both of her kids were born overseas and traveled everywhere she went. Amy currently has a private practice in mental health therapy, teaches parent education, yoga, and meditation, and loves to spend hours running trails, playing music, and making art. Amy, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Well, I am super excited because we've had such an interesting range of guests so far, from people working in the UN, people working in the U.S. Foreign Service, for NGOs, and plenty of people who are living here in Montana, but who have or who are currently engaged in an international career. Very interesting thought that maybe we'll want to tease apart a little bit more. But I know from my experience overseas and my kids going to international schools that there is a very large population of international school teachers teaching all around the world in different types of schools. It's a great opportunity, not only for people who are studying education, but who are curious and adventuresome and want to see a bit of the world. So, Amy, tell us a little bit about yourself and your career as an international educator.
Yeah, it was definitely not something on the table. And so I did start my bio by saying we really, my husband and I really opened our world by having this conversation with an educator who said, you know, if you're thinking about doing something different, and at the time we had both been teaching in Boulder, Colorado, and we met at a middle school there. And we decided, you know, let's try this thing that this woman talked to us about. She said, go to Mexico. And we said, okay, we'd love to continue learning Spanish. Could be really cool. Didn't know what we were getting into. And we looked into the international teaching world and quickly got connected to the longest and the oldest U.S. job fair called the UNI, University of Northern Iowa International Teaching Fair. And got connected to go to their, I like to say, kind of speed dating world of pick a place, we want to hire you process. And within a week, we were signed up. And within 2 weeks, we went to this international job fair, not at all knowing what we were getting into. And when we got there in the middle of winter, we literally went into conference area, and there were several different schools from all over the world highlighting the jobs they have for teachers, and some were looking for certified teachers. Both my husband and I were at the time in multiple subjects, so we had some options. But they were also looking many for people that just were interested in maybe volunteering or helping to teach English. So there's a wide range in this world of international teaching, some that are looking for degrees, and some that are looking for people that, like you said earlier, are just looking to explore the world and try something different for a little bit. So we went to this job fair, and within a few days of really like going to, it felt like speed dating. You go to a quick 10-15 minute job interview. They'll give you the spiel about why you should join this school in this country. You'll read a little bit about it. They'll tell you the job openings, what they can offer. You take the information away, and we go to the hotel, and we had our heads expanded to, we have no idea what we got ourselves into. And it quickly turned into narrowing it down to about 3 or 4 schools that looked interesting and looked like we could maybe survive on, and ended up going to Honduras as our first location, largely because we wanted to work on learning our Spanish and continuing with that and growing that. And also, I was finishing up my master's degree in international school counseling, and they were able to offer me a way to do an internship at the school and get the final steps taken care of in that program. So that was our step out of the US.
So, Amy, your path is one that I've seen with other international school teachers, that one gets into the system, if you will. You were in Honduras, you were in Bangladesh, you were in Denmark. The teachers I meet also have this, I think it's a very unique opportunity in the international career world, that you can kind of move around all over the world because these schools are everywhere. Is that accurate? Is that a part of the international teaching career?
Yes. Yeah. So it's a good question, because it may seem like the world is big, and yes, it is. But when you get into the world of international education, it becomes small, and you start to meet people that know people that were at the last location, or who taught in this school, or who know this family. And so it becomes a tight-knit community the longer you're overseas. And there's lots of ranges from going to our first location in Honduras was a very small pre-K to grade 8 program outside of the second largest city in Honduras, called San Pedro Sula. And we were in a small community called La Lima that was actually originally built for the Chiquita Banana Company. And so we were in this little gated community, very small school. And even though it was called an international school, it was largely Hondurans. So we had a very unique population. Fast forward, when we moved to Bangladesh, we ended up with over 65 different nationalities in the student body. So very diverse experience, and it truly was an international school. That said, when we walked out the door, we took a leave of absence from our district in Boulder, Colorado, just for a year. And they said, okay, we'll grant you a leave of absence for a year. Well, halfway through that year, we got so intrigued by, what does this actually mean? I think we want to stay another year, or maybe even look into some other countries eventually. So we contacted the district again and said, what do you think about granting us 2 years, and then we could come back to the States? And they said, well, we normally don't do this, but yeah, okay, we can do this for you. So again, in kind of if you think about the school year, fall to spring, about midwinter, we went yet again back to the UNI job fair to look at opportunities during that second year to figure out a new place to go. And I will say that each time we got a job, we actually took out the map and said, where is this country? Where are we moving to? Honduras is very small, and we had only been to Costa Rica, but it was close by. And then when we took the job in Bangladesh, we said, where is this country? It's very small, near India, Southeast Asia. And then when we went to Denmark, we said, oh, yes, okay, where is this country? Took out the map again. Very different circumstances for what brought us to each place. But largely job matches, personality of who interviewed us, and whether we felt like it was a good fit. The second year that we were living in Honduras, I was pregnant. My son was born in Honduras, and we knew that we were going to be moving with a 3-month-old. So we were very drawn into the community in Bangladesh. They had 14 people the previous year that had raised their first child there on campus, and were very well suited for families to start overseas. And we said, okay, well, if they've all done this, we can do it. And lots of support there to get care with like nanny roles and house help and, just anything you needed provided, at a very low cost. So it was very doable for a young family starting out. Some places that you start out, you will end up making very little teacher salaries in the US, but maybe even less than that. And some that you go to, actually, you look at the cost of living and whether they provide housing, whether they provide different things, I guess, that are added into what the total would be for your income. So each location is unique as far as how much you can save and how much the country actually costs to live in. Having lived in, starting with Honduras and then Bangladesh, we were living in developing countries. So we saved quite a bit. So then the world got smaller. We ended up going to Bangladesh. We stayed in Honduras for 2 years. Bangladesh, then we stayed for 5 years, and loved the school. Like I said, 65 different nationalities there. My son was going to preschool there, and my daughter was born in Bangladesh, and they were exposed to kind of the depth of the world in so many beautiful ways. We would go into their class and the kids would be singing happy birthday in 10 different languages when a kid had a birthday. And they'd all be differently dressed and different skin color and different religions and different traditions and customs and values. And there was no right or wrong. And I loved that. It was just really teaching me a world perspective and also a very diverse perspective on how to just coexist with other human beings in a really harmonious and beautiful way. So the short of the answer to your question is kind of highlighted in how we got our third job in Denmark, which is we took a year of travels afterwards. We said, okay, we've been overseas for a long time. Our parents are asking us to be back with 2 kids now. So we spent a year of travels, and I wouldn't say it was our year off. I would actually call it a year on because we traveled with 2 toddlers, but we got to live in also different unique countries by working on doing woofing stays, Worldwide Organization of Organic Farms. And that's a good way too, that you can still be a learner internationally and live with international communities. We spent some time starting in Colorado on a farm, then we went to New Zealand, then we went to Alaska, and we traveled the world with our kids, opening and exposing them to different parts of the world, but not in school anymore, unstructured, more or less. About halfway through that year, we ended up contacting our boss in Bangladesh and just said, hey, would you look over our resumes? We're just curious what you think about it. And he looked them over, gave us feedback, and he said, and by the way, we have jobs available for you two in Denmark. So then we said, okay, we weren't really expecting to go to Europe. And then we said, we love our boss, he became a friend of ours, and we ended up taking jobs in Denmark. So small world.
Wow, what a path, Amy. That's really extraordinary. I want to pick up on one point that you made and something that's come out from some of our student participants. And that is, you were talking about diversity and really going to places where you don't know about, you're not familiar with the culture, the attitudes, the language, and that can be a bit daunting, frankly, for some. But it's, I think, also an interesting aspect of the international school. I'm calling it a system. It's not formally a system, but that there are so many out there, this network of schools that they are there to kind of catch you and help you get established in certainly in some way. You don't simply land at the airport and try to find your way around. How do these international schools support teachers?
Yeah, good question. Typically, and I'm trying to think back, I think in each one of the places we lived, we had open access to people that would help with the transition before we moved there, answering any emails, questions, connecting us to families that have lived there in the past, or people that have taught there at the school. And so we had a lot of people we could connect with and ask those first step questions before we even moved there. Then typically we would arrive to the school a week early. Maybe it was even longer. This was a long time ago. So I think it was about a week. And then we would do a transition time where they would have new teacher hires, learning about the culture, giving us the ins and outs of location. We would often go on bus tours around the cities we were in. We would be hooked up with someone that was an international family that had been there, and then coupled with a teacher that had been at the school for a while as support people with our transitions.
And what about your academic preparation? Does one have to have a degree in education and a teaching license to teach in international schools? Are there other ways in which one can explore those opportunities?
Yeah. So I would say teaching has a huge range. We typically, because we are licensed and we had those degrees, we went to schools that were asking for that. But there are other opportunities, and many people began teaching, whether it be teaching English as a second language, through the TOLSO program, or teaching through the Peace Corps, and starting out in like a couple years working in a location in a very different structure, but also teaching and getting their foot out of the US. And then those are not needed. They don't need to have teaching degrees to be able to do that.
Amy, another question that we've been getting from our participants, I'm going to kind of give a little bit of background to allow you to think about your answer, which is going to ultimately be an interesting story that kind of helps us understand the differences in culture and how we can get along in a culture that maybe we don't fully understand and know. But I'm using my example as a Peace Corps volunteer in Kyrgyzstan, where as the honored guest, you were always given the boiled sheep's head at dinner to eat. One doesn't often receive a sheep's head to eat here in the United States. And so it creates a kind of strange cultural moment when you're not really too sure what to do, but you kind of muddle through it all. And somehow at the end of it, there's a great appreciation of the people whose culture you're living in, that you're trying and doing your very best. And even though you're making mistakes, we're all good and we're all human in the end. Luckily in Kyrgyzstan, you know, the idea is that you can cut off the different pieces and hand them around the table. And so I was lucky to not have to eat the entire head, but on occasion a sheep's eye or ear. Amy, what about from your perspective? You've been in all of these different places. What's a story that you could share with us that really helps us understand this kind of living and working and in different cultures?
Yeah. Yeah, I love, there's usually a food story of something unique that you get handed or they say is a delicacy. And I think because I started in Honduras and then Bangladesh, and Bangladesh just taught me so much about, the inequities of the world and being humble and being grateful, and what a privilege I have coming from the US and being white, honestly. And one of my first experiences of just going into a traffic circle and having, my baby that's so healthy and just looks like they're developing so well. And of course, we didn't have to wear seatbelts. So I'm sitting there just holding my baby. And someone taps at the window and is holding their baby, putting out their hand for money and asking for help. And their baby looks very sickly and they look very young. And it's hard to know sometimes, whether this is a scam or whether that they're really there asking just for themselves. But I learned very quickly to have, just an openness to, we are all human beings and we are all deserving of living and coexisting together. And Often the ways that I worked with that, we did a lot of community service, and I became the community service coordinator in our middle school at both Honduras and in Bangladesh. And we got to do a lot of experiential projects outside of the school and into the depths of the cities. And so we would work with different organizations. My husband worked for Habitat for Humanity, and they built houses with the high school students. I tended to work in different orphanages and trying to do some collaborative work, either by going in and just creating some experiences with the kids in the orphanage, or having the kids come to visit our school and get to do things like type on a computer or go swim in a swimming pool, things that we just take for granted, or I did for sure, and allowing them to have those human experiences. And then it gave our students kind of that unique blend of, here we are together, we are all the same, we are humans. And so there's just a wonderful gift when you are open to different cultures and the ways of doing things. And again, just there's no right or wrong. It's just different and unique. And so being open-minded and curious is really helpful if you choose this path.
Well, Amy, you are not the first person to mention this curiosity and being interested and a bit adventurous in the world. Everybody we've talked to has suggested, those are common characteristics if you're interested in the international career path. You also mentioned the idea of human contact and the importance of the, at the base of the work, whether you are a teacher, a diplomat, an aid worker, is really this humanity and engaging with people. And so for those of you who are watching this, who like to be around people, like to kind of engage and learn and know about other people, this international career path is something you might look into. Amy, another question, maybe in two parts. You mentioned these career fairs. So on a kind of very concrete level, the actual path to getting a job in an international school is one thing. And then maybe somewhat more subjectively, could you share your views on what are international schools looking for? What kind of qualities and characteristics of potential new teachers are they looking for?
I think those two words, curiosity and open-mindedness, come to mind first. And then they're often looking for people that are willing to kind of fit into their community in a variety of ways, and often wearing many hats, just again, being open-minded to possibilities. Looking for friendliness, a willingness to immerse themselves into the culture in a multitude of ways. Sometimes they'll ask you about what experience have you had with traveling at all, if any, if you know any foreign languages. Although all of these schools, I didn't mention this before, but all of these, English is the medium. Often students would take classes in the native language of the country, but luckily, in all three countries, Honduras, Bangladesh, and Denmark, having English as a base was actually a plus. And little did I know that English is so world renowned, like Danes speak English beautifully. Bangladesh, it was a privilege to be able to speak English, and those that educated themselves enough to know English actually fared better with sales and marketing and being able to kind of survive because they had that underway. So I think really just being open to possibilities, maybe someone that is pretty stable, you're okay with things not going the way you expected, like getting that pig's head, to arrive in your plate or on your plate or there's so many nuances and things that you just have to shift gears on when you live and you work overseas. And yet that's also something that allows you to be flexible. I think it's a life skill I've gained from living and working overseas, is just going with the flow more so.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And then Amy, just if you could touch on is there a network of career fairs that pop up across the United States if a student is interested in attending one of those? How do you learn about those? How do they engage?
Yeah. So there's a couple different ones that are online that I haven't looked this up recently, but there was the International Educator TIE online, and then there was Search Associates. Those were big names a few years back. And then the UNI Fair still exists, the University of Northern Iowa in the US. Also, there's a lot happening technology-wise. So many schools, if you contact them, if you look on their website, you can contact an administrator, send your resume, send your area of interest, and sometimes they'll just contact you and do interviewing over Zoom.
Well, I mean, what a great opportunity, Amy. You've really laid out an interesting path and an interesting opportunity out there that is not just in one place, but in so many. Everywhere you go, you find these international schools. I'm glad you mentioned that, at least in your case, the language of instruction is English. Of course, that's not true for all international schools, but it is a great opportunity for those who have maybe less interest in language learning and may feel a bit daunted by a foreign language, that the place of work is essentially in English. And Amy, thanks also for sharing kind of your personal views on these things and your personal path that's led you all around the world. And then here in Missoula, where you're in good company with a lot of internationally minded folk. So thanks for joining us, Amy. We really appreciate it. I'm going to just say a quick thank you once again to our very generous sponsors at the Dennis and Phyllis Washington Foundation, Allegiance, First Interstate Bank, Trail West Bank, QFI, High Stakes Foundation, and Longview Foundation. And I'm going to say thanks again to Amy Friedman, who has joined us here to share her slice of her international career as an educator all around the world. Amy, thanks again.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, everybody. So thanks for joining this one. We have coming up very shortly, in fact, in about 45 minutes, 3 colleagues from the World Wildlife Foundation. They're going to tell us about their work, what they do all around the world. Should be completely fascinating. And then we have 2 more full days of this international careers extravaganza coming to you online from the Montana World Affairs Council. Thanks everybody for watching. Thanks again, Amy Friedman. See you all soon. Bye-bye.